amazing how a few weeks have actually filled more journal space than the entire rest of the year combined. With everything going on in the world around us, the long overdue protests, the pandemic, my own physical, emotional, and spiritual growth, and challenges, in addition to everything that we have tackled and reflected on in class, recognizing some highlights was more of a task of sorting out than actually pulling from somewhere. But that being said, I have identified 3 themes in my journal for the last few weeks that I would like to share with you here today. Number 1, the mind is both a powerful machine and a delicate circuit. As we've discussed forms of self-healing and everything from understanding our chakras to practicing pranas, I've also been engaging with Western medicine in the fields of ophthalmology, neurology, neurological ophthalmology, cardiology, and even physical therapy. What I'm finding that all of this has in common is understanding both the resilience and fragility of the human brain. Like any circuit, the brain has limitations on the load it can bear. Now, just as PTSD is a function of overstimulating the circuitry of the brain through exposure or overexposure to trauma, I'm starting to wonder if moving too fast into new, deeper spiritual places and self-understanding can be just as challenging of an adjustment for the brain. This underscores for me the idea that the journey is perhaps more important than the destination. Taking our time to get to where we're going is a valuable exercise. More and more doctors are leaning toward a diagnosis of non-organic neurological disorder. In other words, my physical symptoms are a random expression of the brain looking for a physical place to express an unidentified phenomenon happening in the circuitry. It's also made me wonder if there could be such a thing as dysfunctional enlightenment, where we are literally pushed too far, too fast. I'm not talking about that in a so heavenly minded we're no earthly good sense, but rather in a practical, neurological circuitry sense of the brain. It's a thought that I'll have to continue to hold space for. It's been said that enlightenment isn't something that we seek, it's something that we find. Blending that with an academic environment where pursuing knowledge is the essence of what we do is proving to be a little bit challenging. So number 2, and closely related to that, is this idea that knowing is not the ultimate end of the journey. Knowledge is merely one means to the end, and even at that, it's a means which can only carry us so far toward that ultimate desire. This notion largely comes from my work on the Spiritual Classic Project, reading the book The Cloud of Unknowing. But it's also highlighted in the balance between the study and understanding of the various asanas versus the experience and practical application of them. It's one thing, and an important thing, to know the English and Sanskrit name for a pose, as well as the muscles and ligaments and the bone structures that it both impacts and nurtures. It's another thing altogether, a different level of understanding, to see the joy on a child's face as they execute a pose and do it right, and do it well and feel it in their body. To hear the testimony of expectant mothers, that their experience has, and how that experience, the practice of the asanas, has changed the experience of pregnancy, and possibly even changed, as a result, the lives of the children soon to be born. And to simply feel the personal relief from pain and discomfort that can come from practicing well. Now, these experiences are not unrelated to the technical knowledge that we've been studying, and yet somehow manage to transcend it. And finally, number 3, all of those thoughts on knowledge not with understanding. Knowledge of how we got to where we are is irreplaceable. I picked up a small cell phone game somewhere along the way this summer where the object is simply to untie knots. While sometimes frustrating, it's also truly oddly satisfying. But as I continued my project of writing out the Yoga Sutras, I feel a strong connection to the deep and rich history that informs the wisdom behind them. And I have less and less doubt that it's a same or similar source to the wisdom behind our own sacred Christian texts. I'm also keenly aware that as I go through my own diagnostic process in the last few months, how often I have been asked to recall my own history of injury and trauma in an attempt to unravel my current state of being. And as exhausting that is, it's absolutely necessary to uncover as close as we can get to truth. And just as all that is true, we can't read headlines about protests and misguided photo ops without untying the knots created by all of the paths that have brought us to this point in history. It'll be difficult to move forward without untying what is. And we can't untying what is without examining how it came to be. About halfway through the summer course, I told Dr. Russell that things just seemed to finally click. It only took me about a semester and a half to get there, and in terms of achieving the teaching certification, maybe it's put me a little bit behind the curve. I think that, though, my biggest lesson the last few weeks this summer has been a call to make space for the journey, a call to give it the time it needs as the journey itself dares to unfold. And that's something for which I am deeply grateful. So once again, the divine light in me sees and honors and cherishes the divine light in you. Namaste.